Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. A few months ago, I posted a video on how to open, contribute to, and invest in a Roth IRA at Charles Schwab, and since then I've had a lot of comments and questions specifically about the investing process. So I thought I'd put together a video today going into more detail on how to trade shares of stocks or securities on the Charles Schwab interface. So for most people, when you log into your Charles Schwab account, the first page you'll see is this overview page. If you select the account that you want to look more into, it'll take you to a portfolio page, which essentially just shows you an overview of all the different investments that you currently have in this account. Let's just go through this portfolio page quickly because a lot of this will come up again when we go to actually buy shares of these stocks or securities. So the first thing on the left here is the symbol. So this is a 3 to 5 digit code essentially for the stock or security. It's a unique identifier recognizing its place in the stock market. Next we have the name of that stock or security. Then the quantity, so the number of shares that you own in that stock or security. If you have dividend reinvesting turned on, more often than not, this quantity will not be a whole number. So just keep that in mind if you're like, oh, I bought 5 shares, but I see 5.64. Like, what's that about? It's because of dividends. Next, we have the price, which is just the value of one share as of the last traded value in the stock market. The price change, which is just the recent change of that price. The market value, which is just the quantity times the price. So that's of all the different shares, what's your total ownership? What's the value of all those shares put together? Next, we have the day change. So that's just the recent change of the market value. And the cost basis, which is how much money you physically used to purchase these shares. So this is saying we spent $834 to purchase these shares. The market value is $942, so that's a gain of $107. Next, we have ratings, which is just like Schwab's way of analyzing the different stocks or securities. So if you click on that, it'll give you like a pop-up window that just gives you more information about the stock or security. Dividend reinvesting is turned on, so it says yes for these. If it's not turned on, it'll say no. And then finally, the percent of account, which is based off of the market value. So all of your shares represent 39.3% of your total portfolio, whereas the other shares of the second security represent 60.7% of the portfolio. And then the final thing to note quickly, at the bottom of the portfolio, you'll see a cash and money market section. So cash and cash investments is what the line is called. Typically when you're buying shares of a stock or a security, it's very rare that you'll have the exact dollar amount that you need in order to buy, however many shares that you want. So there's typically always some change left over, some leftover money. All of that money goes into a money market fund within your account, which you can kind of think of as like a savings account within your investments. So this will give you a very small kind of nominal percentage return on your money. And that cash is just sitting there, essentially just waiting to be used to purchase shares in the future. Okay, so this was the portfolio page. So now we want to go in and actually see how to trade specific shares of stocks or securities on the Charles Schwab platform. So what you want to do is go to the top of the page here and hit trade. This will bring you up to the one-stop trading page. So you can handle pretty much all of your trading activity through this page. So the first thing it asks you for is the symbol. So like we mentioned on the portfolio page, the symbol is just the 3 to 5 digit code representing a specific stock or security on the stock market. If we want to look at a specific stock, for instance, all you need to do is just type in the name of the company that you want to invest in, and the symbol should come up. So if we want to type in, for example, Microsoft, we can see the first option, Microsoft Corporation, MSFT. That's the Microsoft stock. If you're investing in a company that has similar names to other companies, I would just double check that you're using the correct symbol by just typing the company name into Google and seeing what Google tells you is the stock symbol. So once you select a symbol, the rest of this page will auto-populate. The first option here is strategy. This auto defaults to stock/ETF because Schwab recognized that the symbol MSFT is Microsoft stock, which is obviously individual stock. If you select this drop down, you'll see a bunch of different options, but if you're a beginner investor or just kind of the average investor, don't worry about all these different options. Just make sure it's selected to stock/ETF. Over on the right, you'll see a bunch of different figures and numbers, so I'll just quickly go through what these mean. The biggest number here is the current market value, so the last traded value of this stock, $231.96. Below it, it'll show you the recent change of that value, red if it's been down, green if it's been up, pretty self-explanatory. Over in the next section, it'll show you bid and ask price. So one common misconception that I see new investors make all the time is that when you buy or sell shares of a certain investment, that transaction happens immediately at the price that you are purchasing or selling it at. It's easy to forget because the stock market is such a kind of intangible, virtual concept, but remember everything here is based off of supply and demand. So there's a specific number of shares in the stock market that are being traded at any given point in time. If you want to buy a share of a specific stock, there needs to be a share of that stock available for purchase. Someone else needs to be selling it. Conversely, if you want to sell a share of a stock, someone else needs to be willing to buy it. So because of this, because of supply and demand, there's a price which buyers are willing to pay, which is the bid price, and there's a price that sellers are willing to sell at, which is the ask price. For stocks and securities that are considered very liquid, so these would be stocks and securities that are traded at very, very high volumes, constantly being traded in the stock market, the difference between the bid price and the ask price is usually very, very small. This is more of an issue when you're trading stocks or securities that are not very commonly traded. There's a pretty small volume on the stock market because the price that you think you might be paying could be very different than the price that you actually end up paying. So you just want to pay special attention to these numbers if that's a situation that you find yourself in. Over on the right, we have day range and 52-week range. So this is pretty self-explanatory. In the day range, it's just the lowest value that the share dropped to versus the highest value that it was raised to in a given day. 52-week range is saying over the course of the year, the lowest value that the Microsoft stock was $132, the highest value was $242. So it just shows you kind of the spread of the stock over the recent amount of time. Further below that, we have today's open and previous close. So it's important to remember, especially if you're a new investor, active trading hours are not 24/7. Transactions will only go through when the stock market is actually open. So in the US, that's 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, with the exception of stock market holidays. So when it says today's open, that means the value of the stock when the market opened today. And previous close just means the value of the stock when the stock market closed the day before. I'm filming this on a Sunday, so we're currently well outside of active trading hours. The last active trading day was on Friday, so today's open refers to the value as of Friday morning, and the previous close refers to the value as of Thursday evening. And then finally, volume is just the total number of shares of this stock or security that are being traded in the stock market. Okay, so next you want to tell Schwab what you actually want to do with this stock. Do you want to buy it or do you want to sell it? If you go into action, those will be the options: buy, sell, and sell short. Sell short is something that I would stay far away from if you're still a new investor, if you're a beginner. This is not something you want to mess around with if you don't know what you're doing because the potential cost can be really, really high. Essentially what it means is you are trading stocks that you don't actually own, you're just borrowing them. So there's definitely a higher amount of risk involved with selling short. So I would stick to just buying and selling. If you're a buy and hold investor, that essentially means you just buy stocks and hold on to them. So the only option that you'll probably be selecting is buy. So let's go ahead and do that. We hit buy. We'll choose the quantity of shares of the stock that we want to purchase. Let's say 5 shares right now. Then it'll ask you if you want to reinvest dividends. So what this means is certain stocks or securities on a monthly or quarterly basis will give out dividends, which are just kind of small little cash bonuses essentially of holding the stock or the security. If you check to reinvest dividends, what that means is those little cash payments will go directly back into your investments and purchase more of this same stock. If you choose not to reinvest dividends, that money will just go to your money market account where it will just sit as cash. So most people choose to reinvest dividends because you can take advantage of compounding growth this way. You don't have to actively go in and buy new shares when your current shares are being paid out. It'll just automatically be reinvested. The other benefit of reinvesting dividends is if you have a taxable brokerage account, you can minimize some of your capital gains by reinvesting your dividends. This is less of an issue if you have a tax-sheltered account like a Roth IRA, but again, it's still good practice because of compounding interest. So let's go ahead and hit reinvest dividends. And then finally, the final section that we need to tell Schwab what to do is on the order type. So there's a few different order types. You have market order, limit, stop, stop limit, and trailing stop. Probably the most common one and the easiest one to understand is market order. What this means is you're willing to buy the shares at the advertised price. You want the trade to go through pretty much as soon as possible, so you're just going to buy, whatever price is being shown currently. The next option is limit order. So what this means is if you're buying shares, you want to wait until the stock drops to a certain value before actually submitting that transaction. So currently Microsoft is valued at $231. If we wanted to put a limit order in for, let's say, $225, this essentially would be telling Schwab, we don't want to actually buy these 5 shares of Microsoft stock until the value of those shares drops to $225. So the final thing you would need to tell Schwab then is timing. So there's a few different options: day only, good until canceled, fill or kill, immediate or cancel, and then extended hours. I would only pay attention to the first 2, especially if you're a more beginner investor. The last 3 are a little bit more complicated. The first option would be day only. So this is if you have a limit order to $225, this transaction would automatically expire. So it would automatically cancel itself if the Microsoft stock never drops to $225. So let's say on Monday when the stock market opens, the Microsoft stock just goes up and up and up and it never goes down to $225. If I had this transaction, it would just automatically be canceled by Monday evening. If, on the other hand, I had something called good until canceled for the timing, this transaction would go through whenever Microsoft stock hits $225. Even if it doesn't happen on Monday, it would, maybe wait 2 weeks, however long it takes to drop into $225, then it would go through. Schwab has a little note down here where it says good for 60 calendar days, so it'll automatically cancel after about 2 months if the limit price is never reached. Okay, so for this order, I'm just going to select market order. Because market orders are filled instantaneously or as close to instantaneously as possible, there's no timing selection. It's just automatically day only. And then over here, it'll give you your estimated amount. Keep in mind, this is, again, just an estimate. It should be pretty close to this, especially if you're trading a very liquid stock. But because of the difference between bid and ask price, it can be slightly different. So once everything looks good, just go ahead and hit review order. Review everything again, and then hit place order, and your transaction will go through. Keep in mind you won't see this reflected immediately in your portfolio, especially if you're trading outside of active trading hours, because transactions will only go through while the stock market is open, and Schwab needs a little bit of time to process it. So the final thing I want to quickly mention, if you're trading mutual funds, this screen will look a little bit different. This screen right now is applicable to stocks, like we just did with Microsoft stock, and ETFs, which are collections of individual stocks, but the shares of ETFs trade exactly like stocks, so it's very similar to the process for purchasing and selling shares of individual stocks. Mutual funds, on the other hand, are a little bit different. Mutual funds are only traded at the end of stock market day, so there's not these kind of fluctuations throughout the day that you have to be mindful of. So if you go into the symbol selection and you put in a mutual fund, like for example, the Schwab S&P 500 Index Fund, which is SWPPX, and select that, you'll see that the page changes and looks a little bit different. It automatically recognizes it as a mutual fund. It has the net asset value, or NAV, which is just the price of one share of that mutual fund. Recent changes, 52-week range, similar. A little bit less information than the stock/ETF page, just because trading mutual funds is a little bit more straightforward. So it'll ask you for the action: buy, sell, and buy another. So let's just hit buy. For this mutual fund, you purchase the amount in dollars. So instead of buying like a 1 share or whatever, you just put in the actual amount of cash that you have available to invest, and it'll automatically invest all of that cash. So the other thing to pay attention to here is the minimum. Some mutual funds will have minimum requirements like $1,000, $2,000, whatever. A lot of Schwab mutual funds will just have $1 minimum, so essentially no minimum. So just make sure you're putting in at least as much as the minimum requires you to. So if we put in, for example, let's say $100, it'll invest $100 into this mutual fund. And then it'll just ask you whether you want to reinvest dividends and capital gains only, or none. Same philosophy as dividends with ETFs or stocks. It's a good way to kind of reduce your capital gains while also taking advantage of compounding interest and compound growth. So I pretty much always will reinvest my dividends. So I just hit yes for this one. And then when you're ready, just review order, place the order, and wait for the transaction to go through once the stock market opens. I hope this video was really helpful to you guys for the actual ins and outs of trading stocks and securities on the Charles Schwab interface. If you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments below and I will do my best to help out. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like for the YouTube algorithm and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this, because I release new videos every single week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week.